With Fontaine's future secured, Arlecchino has a new task on her hands, recruiting for Project Stuzha. If she doesn't recruit some new people, and soon, the children in the House of the Hearth and the orphanage as a whole may be at risk. What can she do? Well, it's been said that the children of Natlan train in the art of war, and are incredibly adept at fighting. Even better, her good friend the Traveler is leaving Fontaine and bound for Natlan. Guess we'll continue this journey across Teyvat, this time to do some recruiting. And as for you, dear viewer, in need of a quick recap of the Natlan Archon quest before our next adventures in Sumeru, well, this definitely won't be a quick recap, but it'll be faster than replaying Natlan, and hopefully more entertaining than just reading a quest summary. At least I hope so. Act 1 begins with us still in Fontaine, and Paimon brings up the fact that we've never actually met another person from Natlan. As far as we know, there might not even be any people in the nation anymore. To be fair, that would make our trip relatively short, so I guess it wouldn't be the worst thing. Unless you're, again, Arlecchino. Before we can worry about the immediate future any more than we already have, Charlotte appears alongside Navia, Clorinda, and Farina to wish us well on our journey. Unfortunately though, the crew that came to see us off wished for uneventful travels, which, for us, means we're probably going to get dragged into war or something. Again. Well, I guess at least it would make sense for it to happen in, you know, the nation of war. Arriving in Natlan, we realize it's definitely not what we expected, which I guess was a bit of a universal reaction. Not only is it full of life and various animals and plants, but it seems like there are definitely humans living nearby.
We've got to be on the right track.
What gave that away? We make our way further in thanks to the arrows on the ground and on random displays, which introduces us to our first humans in Natlan. Well, I suppose human might be a loose term in Teyvat. After eavesdropping on the trio's conversation for a while, we finally decide to approach the girl who introduces herself as Kachina. While we didn't entirely understand what they meant when discussing a pilgrimage, it seems obvious enough that she needs teammates. We're probably capable, right? Wrong, because we're not from Natlan, though that's never stopped us before, so maybe plot will be on our side too. Regardless, Kachina, after explaining what the pilgrimage actually is, offers to be our guide around Natlan, well, at least around her specific tribe, in exchange for allowing her to observe us with the goal of growing stronger. If growing is what she wants, well, she probably shouldn't seek advice from Paimon. Oh, yeah, this is our son. I don't think I actually showed all of the Natlan exploration I did to farm for C2, but I did a lot, and you obviously can't get very far in Natlan without first meeting the little guy, who by the way was a perfect White Day NPC argue with a wall. During our tour of the tribe and not so subtle lore drop commonly found in Act 1, we run into the tribe's chief, who's probably the first adult we have come across in Teyvat, concerned about a child wandering around with a total stranger she just met. No, sir, we're definitely not trying to recruit her into joining the House of the Hearth. I have no idea what you mean. Leaning more into the esteemed traveler instead of the feared harbinger, we quickly learn our reputation found its way into Natlan, despite having never met residents of the nation before. Though, depending on who you talk to, our reputation might be a bit of a mixed bag. Luckily though, it seems like it's the good parts that came, and Pascal not only apologizes to us, but even encourages Kachina to learn everything and anything that she can. Well, that's a glowing recommendation if I've ever heard one. Kachina mentions that registration for the pilgrimage ends soon, so we should probably try to make our way to the Stadium of the Sacred Flame so she can register and we can meet the Pyro Archon. On the way, we find the first statue of the Seven, and find out that we're unable to resonate with it. Though honestly, it's fine. If we need Pyro, Arlecchino has us covered. Kachina, not entirely sure what our concern is understandably shocked to discover we can resonate with 5 of the 7 elements. And so of course, it's only natural we have to show off a little. Unfortunately though, no Pyro. And it'll definitely be a while before we can resonate with Cryo. We also find out that while Fontaine had Usia and Pneumonia, Numa, Natlan has phlogiston. Actually, did we ever get an explanation as to why Fontaine just had that? Eventually, on our walk, we meet Toto, and although I've just met him, I would die for him. With Toto's help, we make it to the stadium, where we meet Kanich and Mualani. And how. We also find out that the protagonist buff still isn't enough to let us participate in the pilgrimage. What a shame, if only we had an ancient name or something. Lucky for Kachina though, Mualani offers to team up with her for the first part of the pilgrimage. So, once all the registration paperwork is sorted, we join them in pre-competition carb loading. What was I supposed to say? No? The next morning is the pilgrimage, so after meeting up with our new friends and wishing everyone luck, we're introduced to a new mechanic, the long quest warning. This isn't that new, we did see it in Fontaine during Unfinished Comedy, I think, but this is the first time they showed it in the Archon quest. If only we got that during Fontaine Act 5. In the stadium, the rules are briefly explained. Wika makes a very dramatic entrance and lights her hair on fire. Didn't Kachina say she's just a human? Oh yeah, I didn't include that in the recap. Well, Moeka is a human Archon, but she obviously has a bit more capabilities than the average human. Not that the Traveler, or Arlecchino for that matter, can really be a good comparison to that. After Moeka's speech, the team section of the tournament begins. This is the first of many trial character fights in Natlan, but since it's still technically Arlecchino only, we'll skip over it. Mualani and Kachina successfully pass the team section, but unfortunately, as soon as Kachina is by herself waiting for the second round to start, a couple of sore losers decide to come harass a literal child. Listen, if a child supposedly sneaking up on you is enough for you to lose, what do you expect to happen if you end up facing the literal abyss? I get the sentiment here, but it's somewhat lost when you have Noodle Arm McCroptop and Marshmallow Fairy trying to be super intimidating and imposing. Skipping past 2 rounds of trial fights and a cutscene, Kachina comes out on top in her final fight against Mualani, meaning she's won a spot in the Night Warden Wars. After another speech from Moeka, the Night Warden Wars begin, and we're invited by Mualani to visit her tribe while we wait for Kachina's return. One of the single best shots in Genshin Impact, if I do say so myself. At the People of the Springs, we meet Atea, who reminds Mualani that Outlanders must complete a trial before being able to experience the hot springs. Something tells me this is not a fighting-related trial. According to Mualani, in order to try the actual hot springs, we first need to adapt in the artificial hot springs, which have a lower temperature. That seems fair. After all, there are few things as unpleasant as getting into water that's too hot and turning into a tomato. Or maybe that's just a me thing. Mualani tells us that Atea is actually a respected warrior in the tribe, but after being impaled by an abyssal monster, she suffers from permanent abyssal corrosion that prevents her from being able to use the hot springs, which in a tribe that's primary focal point is the hot springs, that sounds vaguely torturous. Be like living in Wisconsin and having a cheese allergy. On our way to get changed for the less hot spring, we find out that apparently Atea's condition is improving, and join on a plan to surprise her by renovating the abandoned hot spring she used to use frequently. But all of that can wait until after we complete our trial. Side note, but am I the only one who finds it kind of hilarious that Mualani is more covered in her swimsuit than she is in her, standard attire? Also, Genshin are cowards for not giving Ether a bun. If the goal was preventing his hair from getting wet, what's the ponytail gonna do? Now you're just gonna have half wet, half dry hair, which is worse than just letting most of it get wet. After our hot springs break, we join Mualani in the previously mentioned renovations, which consists almost exclusively of just shopping at one singular store, followed by a time skip. A welcome workaround for mundane tasks, if you ask me. I'm looking at you, Lua Act 2. Unfortunately, our resting is short-lived, because while we're sleeping, the Abyss shows up. But hey, at least this means we finally get to see Arlecchino in action. Only took the entirety of Act 1. So despite how long this video took, which I mean is kind of par for the course with this challenge, surprisingly, waiting to upload it actually benefited in the ease of writing the script. When I recorded this, it was the second time I had done the Natlan Archon quest, so I was definitely struggling a bit to write the recap. Sometimes when writing these, I'll reference the Genshin fandom page, but that isn't always the best or most accurate, plus the website is atrocious now with ads and pop-ups. However, now when writing this, I have replayed Natlan at least, 6 or 7 times, so I can pretty confidently remember what goes on, and write with much more ease. I'm also getting generally faster-ish with writing scripts, so I guess that helps too. Though I set myself up so badly with this being the first solo run I did with Natlan because I didn't realize the abyssal pylons are only affected by elemental attacks until my 3rd or 4th run, with Dahlia specifically. That was a terrible time. Luckily though, for now, Arlecchino makes easy work of them, which will help us far more later. I ended up finding out in future challenge runs that we can fully skip these last monsters, but hey, you don't get to see Arlecchino much, so it's not so bad. I will be skipping the Pyromage though. We find Atea in the renovated hot spring, looking significantly worse for wear. While she took care of the abyssal pylon that was over here, it was at the expense of exposing herself to even more abyssal corrosion. While waiting for a doctor, we remember our experience in Mondstadt with purifying Dvalin's tears and decide it definitely can't hurt to try here. The first time I played this quest, I was so excited about the callback to Mondstadt, but honestly, with how much we've encountered the Abyss since then, I'm shocked we haven't had to try this until now. As it turns out, the same principle we used to purify the crystals in Mondstadt also works in humans, at least to some degree, and Atea's condition stabilizes. Do we know why we can purify? Or absorb, who knows? Abyssal energy? Not really, but nobody really questions us about it, so we can bench that for a later date. More importantly, when purifying Atea, it became pretty clear that she's definitely not getting better, and instead is near death, even before the attack today. But we decided to keep that to ourselves for now, and with the Abyss attack over, we decide to return to our accommodation and catch up on our lost sleep. At the party for Atea, we ask her about it, and she decides it's finally time to tell Mualani. Atea confesses she only has a few days left at best, and after a somewhat awkwardly third-wheeling on the goodbyes, we return to the party and complete Act 1. A few days later, we start Act 2 by finding out that the team fighting in the Night Warden Wars has returned successful, but without Kachina, so the Rite of Resurrection will be held soon. Before we head to the stadium, Mualani gives us a brief lesson about Natlan's history with the Abyss. TLDR, Natlan got the worst of the Abyss invasion 500 years ago, and the Pyro Archon and the heroes of that time fought to push back against the Abyss. But the lasting effects have lingered, and the Abyss has shown that it's capable of specifically targeting each tribe where it hurts, instead of being a mindless monster army. Mualani explains that the current running theory is that the Abyss invaded the Night Kingdom, and can read the memories of the ley lines, which, yeah, I can definitely see how that's a problem. History lesson aside, we officially start Act 2, so now it's time to make our way to the stadium, meet up with Kanich, and find a spot to participate in the ceremony. I think my only question for this is, when did we have time to learn Swahili to sing this? Regardless, I always lock in for this and the cutscene during Act 5. I usually have sound off or at least lowered when I'm recording so I can listen to whatever I'm watching on a different monitor, but without fail, I have to turn the volume back up for these parts because it's absolute cinema. I love this, and I still fairly regularly watch the Natlan Symphony performance. What can I say? It's just phenomenal. You could never make me hate Natlan. Moika returns and announces that she was unable to find Kachina or her ancient name within the Night Kingdom. The crowd is understandably stunned, declaring that this has never happened before, which seems to happen a lot when we're around. Oh look, Sore Loser 1 and 2 are here to rage bait. However, per usual, when rage baiters are confronted by actual authority, they shrink and try to backtrack. It's like watching Twitter beef in real time. Mualani questions Moika on the investigation into Kachina's whereabouts, and the latter invites her to assist in the investigation if she wants to know more.
Oh, and if it's not too much trouble, could you drop by as well, Traveler?
Well, this is definitely our easiest meeting with an Archon. In the Speaker's Chamber, Moika explains that there's unrest in the Night Kingdom, which will continue to cause the Ode of Resurrection to be ineffective, preventing Kachina's return. Even worse, she believes that it's because the Abyss has discovered the Sacred Flame, which we learned in Act 1's history lesson connects the people to the Night Kingdom, allowing Natlan to fight back against the Abyss, as well as allowing the Ode to take place at all. The Abyss has essentially put Natlan between a rock and a hard place, allow the pilgrimage to continue with the added risk of not being able to be resurrected, or stop the pilgrimage, but weaken the only thing that's allowing Natlan to fight the Abyss off. For now, Moika decides that the pilgrimage will be suspended while she looks for alternatives to continue strengthening the Sacred Flame. Mualani offers to go rescue Kachina herself while Moika searches for a solution, and, well, we can't really let her go alone. According to Moika, the Masters of the Nightwind have a way to extract an ancient name, and as long as we can find Kachina's ancient name, we should be able to pinpoint her location within the Night Kingdom.
Ever since you arrived, I've been hoping to meet you and offer you Natlan's highest level of hospitality.
Why?
Why? Is that not what happened in the other nations you visited?
No, usually by this point we've become a fugitive on the run. We decide to bench the explanation of our past mayhem, and the group splits up for now, with Kanich and Iansan staying to assist Moika, while we join Mualani and Chaska in going to the Scions of the Canopy to find the device needed. When we leave, Kanich questions the real reason the pilgrimage was suspended, and Moika reveals that at this point, it wasn't producing enough contending fire to keep the Sacred Flame going, and suspending the pilgrimage allows for warriors to preserve their strength for defending their tribes. Moika also reveals that she can sacrifice her power to keep the Sacred Flame burning as a temporary stopgap. The dialogue also hints that they already have a long-term solution in mind, one that Kanich and Yansan know about, but while we get some context, there's no fun in learning the whole truth immediately. Besides, more importantly, one of our coworkers has arrived on the scene.
The Archon of Natlan. A force to be reckoned with. The secret of the ley lines is no secret to me. Long have they been destined for ruin. And since the oath made 5 centuries ago remains unfulfilled, what use is the Gnosis in your hands?
I saw some discourse on Twitter the other day about the quality of Genshin's cutscenes, and honestly, anyone who thinks Genshin doesn't have absolutely top-tier cutscenes is simply incorrect, especially in the newer regions. After Marwika depletes her power to support the Sacred Flame, the point of view returns to, us, and honestly, how did we not cross paths with the Fatui when we were leaving the stadium? Regardless, we decide Marwika can probably handle it, and continue to the Silence of the Canopy, where the village chief, after providing us with a Spirit Seeker Stone, tells us to look for a tribe member named Vichama. Why is he kinda... Sorry. Vichama, after hearing our plan, agrees to help us as long as he can use the Spirit Speaker Stone to try and find his friend's ancient name as well. With everyone in agreement, and after we do some shopping and learn Vichama's backstory from the merchant, we climb a literal mountain to meet up with him. It would have been nice if they put a teleport waypoint around here, knowing that we needed to go here for the Archon quest, but minor details, I guess. Before we start, we warn Vichama that it's unlikely Malko is still alive within the Night Kingdom, but he decides he needs to try anyways, even though the priority will still be Kachina's ancient name. With that cleared up, it's time to finally get an Arlecchino appearance. While writing this script, I haven't decided how I'll edit Arlecchino into this video, if I will at all, but I'm also still learning how to use the finer editing effects in Final Cut Pro, so it probably won't be as elaborate as past videos. Ironically, despite the fact that you cannot pay me to rewatch my first Arlecchino video, this video series almost acts as a conduit for showing how my general video and editing style has evolved from the start of the channel. Speaking of the channel starting, here's an ironic change of events that have occurred recently. When I first started this channel and these challenges overall, I pretty much abandoned my main account. I would log in once in a while, but honestly, I was lucky if I remembered to log in once per patch. Yeah, so the pendulum has officially swung in the other direction, and it's gotten to the point that I had to ban myself from even turning on my PC so I wouldn't log into Genshin and neglect my work. What changed? Well, Lowen. I've been very heavily working on farming for him, as well as farming for wishes to C6R5 him. And now that we know he's probably not standard, at least it makes me look a little more sane. But don't worry, regardless, I'll still be streaming the pulls. Ironically, the shield itself wasn't even the most irritating thing this time. It was the fact that anytime the Abyss Mage moved, it lit all the surrounding grass on fire. On that note, sometimes when I'm watching my videos back, I get actually annoyed with myself for how I chose to fight in the moment. Like, why didn't I just use her skill and burst to heal? It would erase the bond of life in the process, so I wouldn't have to worry about the pyro infusion. Well, at least I know how you all feel watching me fight. Nobody has ever accused me of being the best at this game, or even good for that matter. Circling back to the next patch, if you're watching this video and it's still pretty new, I'll be doing viewer polls for Duran and Nicole after the new update goes live. I'll have a sign up form on my community page, and I'll try to do as many as I can, but priority will end up being for those who have more wishes available, just in case Genshin decides to be annoying with letting me log in. Vichama eventually succeeds in finding Kachina's ancient name, but in his attempt to find Malko's ancient name, the Abyss begins to corrode his body. We're able to give him a bit of extra time by trying to purify him, but as the Abyss energy continues to rapidly intensify, Chaska takes matters into her own hands, breaking the Spirit Speaker Stone to release Vichama from the Abyss's hold. While unable to find Malko's ancient name, Vichama is able to witness Malko's last words, in which he expressed relief Vichama hadn't been with them and hope that he can live on for the both of them. After a deep and meaningful monologue from Vichama, Mualani swears that we'll bring Kachina back alive. We return the broken Spirit Speaker Stone to the tribe chief so that he can be the one to explain it to Sitlali, who we haven't even met yet. And after witnessing a pretty heated fight between Chaska and her sister Koichi, we return to Mawika with Kachina's ancient name. Mawika gives us a TLDR about the explosion and the arrival of the captain, but I already gave you all a TLDR of that, so I'm not going to make a TLDR of a TLDR. We head inside Mawika's, office, and after mandatory snooping on the mementos in the room, we chat with Mawika while waiting for everything to be ready for the ceremony.
Most people perceive time as a linear concept, almost like a straight line that can only move forward. We cannot change the past or predict the future. But there's also a different theory, one that I believe to be closer to the truth. Namely, that the past, present, and future all exist at once.
The fact this single conversation has so many implications for the entire story of Teyvat and everything we've done so far, and people still try to claim Natlan's story got retconned at the last second, drives me absolutely insane.
Read!
After Moeka tells us more about the history of Natlan and about her family, the ceremony is ready to commence. We place Kachina's ancient name in the circle, and after a moment, we connect with her consciousness. So at least we know she's still, well, alive. Kachina tells us something is wrong with the Wyob and tries to put on a brave face, but breaks down when Mualani tells her that she matters and will make sure we get her home. Honestly, I feel like way too many people looked past the fact that this is a literal child who is alone in basically hell. She absolutely deserved more praise in the story overall, and maybe a better kit. We lose contact with Kachina and head to nearby ruins where we find temporary entrance to the Night Kingdom. Finally, a proper domain, meaning we get 2 whole sections of this quest with Arlecchino. Yeah, that figures. Now, you might be thinking, well, Ren, this is Arlecchino only. Why aren't you showing all of the fights? Well, number 1, that would end up making this video 5 hours long. And number 2, I will be showing them in the future. I teased this previously, but I plan to make Arlecchino only into one condensed challenge video like Columbina. The challenge overall evolved from being a simple challenge video into, well, a story recap, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, but I'm sure there are plenty of people who would prefer to see the challenge in a more condensed format that focuses more on Arlecchino. And don't worry, that won't be the end of Arlecchino only. I'll definitely make one of these longer recap videos for Nodcry. I actually haven't finished Nodcry on my main account, so I prefer to finish it there first, but I do need to, well, work on videos. Similarly, I won't be showing all of the fights once we get to Act 4 and the war against the Abyss either. Between this video and that condensed challenge video, I'll make sure to show most of the fights though, for better and worse. Eventually, we make it through the ruins and enter the very abyss-heavy Night Kingdom. Gross. We also meet Malco. Sort of. With his help, we're able to avoid being too beaten up by the abyssal attacks. For the most part. Okay, that was insanely targeted. Must have sensed the Crimson Moon stuff, or something like that. Eventually, we find Kachina, and after clearing out the surrounding abyssal enemies, she asks if we can try to save the Wyob that protected her before we leave. Malco offers to hold off the nearby enemies, but once we arrive at the totem, we're very quickly interrupted by a Pyro Abyss Lector. The fight against the Lector is exclusively Trial Mualani and Kachina, which is good because it means the whole thing takes significantly less time than it would have with just Arlecchino. After the fight, Mualani's ancient name randomly shows up, and we meet... Wait, what was his name? Huh, he's taller than I pictured. So much so that he's just referred to as Giant. Thanks, Genshin. Very detailed. As it turns out, Mualani has been acknowledged by her ancient name, and after experiencing a flood of memories, she learns the truth of the plan to save Natlan. Eon-san, having already been acknowledged by her ancient name, suggests we go over all of this after we leave the Night Kingdom, which, yeah, is probably for the best. Before we go, we manage to purify the totem, allowing Kachina to speak to the Wyob, who encourages her to continue to grow and not feel pressured from her ancient name, because regardless of what she accomplishes, she will still be worthy of it. The Abyss closes in on us, and while we initially were unable to make it to the exit in time, Moeka manages to create a new opening for us. Just the hole in the sky. I'm sure that doesn't mean anything for later. Finally, back in Teyvat, we return to Moeka and see the previously stuffed room has been cleared out, the mementos from the past having all been sacrificed in exchange for the power needed to get us out of the Night Kingdom. After Koichi treats everyone, well, minus us, Moeka delivers the full truth to everyone. Natlan has less than a year left before total destruction at the hands of the Abyss. Actually, does the Abyss have hands? Sorry, that's not important. Moeka also explains the true plan to save Natlan, which began 500 years ago. In short, the heroes of each tribe would work to re-establish their tribe, reignite the faith in the Wyobs and the nation as a whole, and eventually choose a hero of the present day to fight alongside Moeka, who placed her life in the sacred flame to be reborn into this present time. So she's technically human, but also technically at least a little above a human, I'd say. However, despite her memories returning this time around, the plan was not passed down to the chosen heroes of today, leaving everything in a kind of awkward waiting game until the heroes fully realize their potential and are properly acknowledged. With Mualani's acknowledgement, we find out that 4 of the 6 tribes have their heroes: Kinich, Eon-san, and Mualani, along with Chalonin from the Children of Echoes. With this influx of information, and not much that can be done except waiting and trying to hold off the Abyss, Moeka decides to properly hold a victory feast for the last Night Warden Wars. At the feast, we chat more with Moeka, who asks for our assistance in saving Natlan.
Doesn't that mean the way everything ends has already been written, including your plan?
I suppose, but so what?
Well, we are the one who can change fate, so I guess we're probably the best people to ask. Moeka also offers to have an ancient name forged for us. Initially, we tell her it's not necessary, after all, we're not from Natlan, but she insists, so I guess there's no harm. At least it'll keep us alive if it comes down to it. Probably will work better than a fried egg anyway. With that, we finish Act 2.
But wait! There's more!
We see the captain, who reveals he has no intention of trying to steal the Gnosis after failing to beat Moeka fair and square, while also seemingly confirming the suspicion of a traitor somewhere in the Masters of the Nightwind. Okay, now Act 2 is actually complete. Act 3 starts with us finding out from Catherine that the Adventurers Guild, at least in Natlan, will focus on collecting and sharing intel regarding the abyssal activities. But we have our long-term encounter points, so unlike Natlan, it's not exactly the end of the world for us. Sorry. Too soon? We run into Kachina, who tells us that Shalonen is in charge of forging our ancient name, so we decide to return to the Children of Echoes to meet her.
On second thought, maybe I'll just find a hole in the ground to jump into and hide for a while.
Relatable. Arriving at the Children of Echoes, we officially meet Shalonen, and okay, we have a half rabbit and a half cheetah. I guess ancestry explanations aren't super important now, but that seems like two very different species for one single tribe. That's neither here nor there though, because more importantly, we find out Shalonen was not informed that we're Outlanders. That kind of seems like a pretty important starting point. But what do I know? She explains that in order to forge an ancient name, there needs to be a record of heroic deeds within the Night Kingdom. But any deeds that occur outside of Natlan won't be recorded by Natlan's ley lines, since they're kinda cut off from the rest of the world. So basically, everything we've done up until this point is useless for this situation. I guess the whole quick start thing that started with Natlan kinda makes a bit more sense now. Shalonen says that the best chance of success would require us to get an acknowledgement from a Wyob, and suggests that we consult Seatlali from the Masters of the Nightwind. Hopefully she doesn't hold a grudge over the Spirit Speaker Stone. Just in case, Shalonen offers to write a letter explaining the situation and the fact it's coming directly from Moeka, while Kachina reaches out to Kanich to deliver the letter and negotiate if necessary. What do? Walk up a hill. That's basically it. We meet up with Kanich, who, before leaving on our task, explains that they discovered the person who rescued the captain after his fight with Moeka is named Auroron, someone who Seatlali looks after. Essentially, Kanich seems to think that offering to help get to the bottom of why Auroron's with the Fatui might be a good bargaining chip to use in convincing Seatlali to help us with forging an ancient name. 2 days later, we head to the stadium to hopefully meet up with Seatlali. She never responded to the letter, but there's still a chance she might be at the stadium. Survey says, nope. We decide to wait for a bit just in case, and as is on brand for Paimon, she puts her foot squarely in her mouth by loudly ranting about the old hag as Seatlali arrives.
You must know this trope from light novels, surely. They use it all the time. The young man who's actually the oldest person in the room.
Yeah, you could say we know that trope pretty well. Not that you'd know, considering our reaction. After clearing up the misunderstanding about Seatlali's visual age versus actual age, and why she never responded to our letter, we get right down to business. Seatlali doesn't believe Auroron would willingly betray the tribe, and agrees to help us so long as we help her prove his innocence. After examining us, Seatlali remarks that we have plenty of heroic deeds and experiences, but the final decision is far above any of the Wyobs. Instead, it's up to the Lord of the Night, who rules over the Night Kingdom, if that wasn't already clear with the whole Lord of the... yeah, you get it. In order to speak to the Lord of the Night, we would have to enter a dreamlike trance, which requires a ceremony, and the ceremony requires materials. Oh boy, I'm starting to get flashbacks. Luckily though, Shalonen volunteers to collect the materials for us, so that frees us up to help Seatlali track down Auroron.
The Fatui are nothing to scoff at, so please, be careful during your investigation.
After Shalonen leaves, Seatlali shares that she was late to our meeting because she was investigating Auroron's home for clues. Apparently, there were signs of a fight involving Snezhnayan weapons, which leads us to believe that he didn't join the Fatui by choice. With this in mind, we leave the stadium and head to the area that Auroron was last seen. Seatlali explains a bit about Auroron's backstory to us before sharing that we can follow a phlogiston trail to track his recent movements. And if you're wondering what a phlogiston trail is, don't worry, we were too. Because while we can control phlogiston, we can't see it. Does that make sense? No, but it doesn't really matter either way because Seatlali is able to share part of her senses with us, at the expense of unknowingly sharing her inner dialogue. We keep that part to ourselves for now though. Eventually, we find a recently abandoned campsite, and Seatlali notices a tribal distress signal among the remaining phlogiston. Further along the trail, we come across signs that a fight took place, and decide to split up to continue investigating. However, shortly after splitting off from Seatlali, we're suddenly transported to the Night Kingdom, where we come face to face with both Auroron and the captain. Hey, coworker. Long time no see. Probably. I doubt the captain is coming to tea parties, but hey, you never know. We find out that Auroron is willingly working with the captain and intentionally left the trails to lure us for a meeting. What's the topic of the meeting? Asking us for an in-person meeting. I can think of at least 5 easier ways to ask for an in-person meeting other than this whole spectacle. The captain also advises us to not share what occurred with anyone, so when we wake up back in Teyvat, we keep it to ourselves and just claim we suddenly felt sick when questioned by Paimon and Seatlali. After a short break, Seatlali informs us that she found a Fatui stronghold nearby and suspects Auroron is being held there. Once we arrive, we confirm her suspicion, and pretending that we didn't just learn that Auroron is very much a willing captive, we pick a fight with the nearby soldiers. This is probably the only challenge video that I've recorded in Natlan that had an easy time with this fight, and honestly, this makes me really want to do a solo with an actual DPS again. Though to be fair, I'm nearly to Natlan with Skirk, so I guess there's that.
And greetings to you too, Gramps.
You know what, maybe I will reveal your secret. Putting that aside, Auroron explains to Seatlali he only helped the captain escape because he was worried they would target Seatlali if he didn't. While frustrated, Seatlali accepts this answer, and we return to the stadium to petition forgiveness for Auroron's actions on account of protecting a fellow member of his tribe. Seatlali explains that she'll get Auroron settled, and then reach out to Shalonen to work on forging our ancient name. And once we're alone with Paimon, we share what actually happened, to her very loud shock. We decide to go together to the planned meeting, and after dodging small talk with Auroron, the captain finally arrives.
Child told me that you're passionate about the unknown and willing to take risks.
Well, we can always count on Child to yap about us to literally anyone who will listen. The captain shares that Moika's plan to wait for the heroes to appear isn't Natlan's only option, and he believes that his plan, while having a much higher cost to the people of Natlan overall, is generally less risky to Teyvat as a whole. We aren't exactly convinced, and after finding out the plan conveniently involves the Gnosis,
Do I look stupid to you?
the captain does explain that he doesn't intend to take the Gnosis now, since he lost fair and square when he fought Moika back in Act 2, but he believes there's another way to enact his plan. Unfortunately, we're interrupted before we can figure out what that other way is.
Something! Bad news, chump! It's your granny!
Before Seatlali can, break Auroron's legs or something, he utilizes plant spores to escape without us noticing, leaving us alone with an even more furious Seatlali.
Little brat. That's it. The next time we meet, I'm definitely going to break his legs.
Okay, I was definitely joking about the leg breaking thing. We return to the stadium with Seatlali, and in hopes to learn something more about Auroron's past and previously mentioned duty, we agree to join her for dinner. Unfortunately, we learn virtually nothing because Seatlali drowns her anger in alcohol.
Do you think she's drunk?
I don't even want to dignify that question with a response. Honestly, Seatlali might be one of the most relatable characters that Genshin has introduced. Also, Genshin's rapid-fire increase in ability for character expressions and interactions overall is such a boost to the storytelling. No notes, truly.
What would you think of me if I were to start dumping all of my complaints on you after we've only just met?
Well, you wouldn't be the first person, and you probably won't be the last. From a combination of meditating a bit and us telling her about hearing her inner thoughts during our earlier investigation, Seatlali sobers up pretty rapidly, at least enough for us to go on a walk outside. Seatlali finally shares what makes Auroron different from others. He was born with an incomplete soul, which is viewed as a bad omen in the Masters of the Nightwind, and resulted in him being abandoned as an infant. Initially, other members of the tribe believed that he could be used as a vessel for lost souls, which would be gathered and returned to the Night Kingdom to strengthen the ley lines, at the expense of Auroron's life. At the time, Seatlali didn't approve, but she also didn't object, allowing the ceremony to go forward. It inevitably failed, and Auroron survived, but Seatlali still regrets that she didn't explicitly object to the tribe potentially sacrificing the then infant's life. Despite the current dire situation in Natlan not being remotely his fault, Auroron, now grown up, feels partially responsible due to the ceremony failing. I guess that's kind of like the trolley dilemma. If the ceremony succeeded, Auroron would be dead, but it didn't. Natlan's ley lines are on the verge of collapse, and a lot more people have died due to the abyss. Can't really blame him for feeling guilty, even if it is misplaced. Regardless, we send Seatlali home to sleep and fully sober up, and then the next morning we find out that various areas have been attacked by the abyss. While Seatlali returns to her tribe to help, we join Mualani in supporting the Children of Echoes. However, before we head off, we inform Moika about our meeting with the captain and his plans. She shares that while the Gnosis can save Natlan, it would erase all all of the souls from the Night Kingdom, along with all of Natlan's memories, culture, and history, and still potentially fail. So yeah, I can see why this wasn't much of a valuable option. Moika also isn't entirely sure what the captain plans to do without trying to obtain the Gnosis, but further investigations can wait until the current Abyss attack is stamped out. At the Children of Echoes, the fight is entirely with trial characters, and the Traveler, so we'll skip past it. At least the lack of fights in early Natlan is rapidly corrected in Act 4, but we'll get there soon. With the Abyss dealt with, we return to the stadium with Shilonen to meet with Moika again, finding Chaska and Koichi already there sharing intel about the Fatui's current movements. We switch to their point of view from when they were investigating, but I'm not going to make you all sit through that too. The TLDR is that the Fatui were defending citizens from the Abyss, and once they returned to camp, they were discussing bringing a source mechanism to the captain. Moika tasks Shilonen with gathering anyone who might be familiar with the secret source, which are Dragon-era machines, so they can try to figure out what the captain might be planning with the source mechanisms. Meanwhile, Citlali arrives and shares that Auroron returned to help defend the tribe, and even though he avoided her, she was able to obtain a talisman gem, which is used to stabilize Auroron's incomplete soul. But he was due for a replacement anyways, so it's not like he's going to lose out by not having this. I feel like that's important to clarify. Regardless, we use the gem to take a look at his memories, invasive as that may be, to figure out the full story of his collaboration with the Fatui. His memories reveal that initially, Auroron was approached by the captain in regards to Citlali, but he refused to provide useful information. Once the captain left, Auroron began to tail the group, intending to track their actions and potentially uncover their plan, including why they're searching for Citlali. However, after witnessing the captain use a spell from the Masters of the Nightwind, he ends up with far more questions than answers. Eventually, when the fight against Moika occurred, he realized any future information would be lost if the captain died, opting to rescue him in hopes of getting the answers once and for all. That's great and all, but more importantly, we find out the captain's plan consists of reconstructing the ley lines in Natlan. Wow, if I had a nickel for every time we've dealt with a plan involving reconstructing ley lines.
I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
With this information, after Citlali rants about her anger towards Auroron, we make haste for the stadium to report what we learned to Moika, wrapping up Act 3.
Traveler, Paimon Citlali. Perfect timing. I've located the captain.
I'm almost positive we left you less than an hour ago. What do you mean you located him already? Putting that aside, we tell Moika what we saw in Auroron's memories, and she explains that reconstructing the ley lines would have similar consequences to the original theory involving the Gnosis. Even worse, it's likely he's already putting the plan in motion, and we need to stop him as soon as possible, with as few forces as we can set aside. No pressure or anything, though. We don't even get to have Citlali's help because her tribe needs defense assistance. So who are we facing the captain and Auroron with? Us, Kanich, Shilonen, and Moika, against the first of the 11 Harbingers. Arlecchino, looks like we'll be counting on you. Once we sort out the frameworks of a plan, Act 4 officially begins, and we make our way to the captain's location. It doesn't take long to defeat, well, everyone, so it's time to confront the captain and Auroron, but probably not fight them. At least I hope not. As we arrive, Auroron activates the mechanism, but in a weird turn of events,
The sound of
Lament!
instead of us fighting Auroron and the captain, we fight Auroron with the captain. Wait, hold on, scratch that. It's apparently not even Auroron, but regardless, we managed to stop the mechanism, so a win's a win. Whoever possesses Auroron refers to the captain as commander, before berating him over letting his sense of honor put him at a disadvantage and preventing his goals from bearing fruit. Meanwhile, we see Auroron's internal turmoil over his birth and the false hope that it brought to his tribe, as well as not knowing what his purpose in life is. He considers previous memories and how those close to him did their best to guide him towards what makes him happy instead of what he feels obligated to accomplish. Auroron is suddenly confronted by the soul that possessed him, a Conrian soldier, Guthrid. He chastises Auroron over being useless and shares his plan to take over Auroron's body to continue to serve the captain. However, with a newfound desire to live and resolve to find a reason for being born, Auroron manages to return to his body and protect his soul. In truly poetic timing, Auroron's acknowledged by his ancient name and the hero of his tribe's past, and we're one step closer to Moika's plan moving ahead. We don't get much chance to digest this new information because a mysterious voice suddenly introduces herself as the Lord of the Night. Oh, that's who we needed to talk to about our ancient name, so I guess that saves us a ceremony.
I awoke and could not hold back my cry.
Yes, I too cry when I'm woken up too suddenly. Moika gives us a bit of a history lesson on Natlan and the Night Kingdom, and we learn that instead of reconstructing the ley lines, the source mechanism provided some power that allows the Lord of the Night to speak to us for the time being. She also reveals that she would be capable of reconstructing the ley lines, but it would be at the cost of her existence. When asked why she would sacrifice herself in that way, we learn she was previously an angel, and that Sealies are also angels, which explains why there are so many around right now, and also why that one Sealy helped us in the Night Kingdom back when when we rescued Kachina. Despite this, Moeka still does not wish to see the Lord of the Night sacrifice her existence, nor does she want to see the history and memories recorded in the ley lines disappear for the people of Natlan. While the captain disagrees and tries to convince her otherwise, Moeka remains firm.
A land without the Lord of the Night, without the protection of the rules, is doomed from the start.
Can someone inform our twin of that? Oh, wait, we aren't there yet. Forget I said that. The captain shares that he holds these aggressively pessimistic views due to his Conrian origins. He knows what destruction the Abyss is capable of and does not wish to see that occur in Natlan. Moeka and the captain go back and forth for a while before Auroran shares that while he initially supported the captain's plan of survival by any means necessary, when he was near death, the memories and emotions he felt towards those dear to him encouraged him to stay alive, and he doesn't want to forget any of that. The Lord of the Night explains she's still capable of the task for the foreseeable future, so we decide to keep it as an emergency contingency plan.
You must have a profound connection to this land since you're so determined to save it. But what are you really trying to protect? The land or its people?
Can't argue with that. The captain finally relents and agrees to assist us along with his forces while we wait to see if the final hero will awaken in time.
Allow me to formally welcome the Fatui to our cause.
Back in the speaker's chamber, the captain shares his history with Natlan. After the cataclysm in Conria, he and his soldiers fled to Natlan, but upon discovering Natlan was suffering against the Abyss as well, they took up arms to try and prevent a second nation from falling. Eventually, he came to know the chief at the time of the Masters of the Nightwind, who treated him kindly despite many Natlan citizens blaming Conria for the disaster. The duo fought side by side until the chief died, and before he did, he told the captain about what the Gnosis is capable of, and just like in present time, Moeka shut down that option back then as well. She's also surprised she never recognized the captain, but he explains the curse of immortality doesn't prevent his flesh from rotting. Gross. We surprise him by bringing up Dainsliff, and it turns out he only really knew him as our sibling's traveling companion, and someone who's far more bitter about the whole Conria 5 Centers thing, which, yeah, makes sense considering it's involving his brother. Putting the discussion of the past aside, Moeka explains that when the 6 heroes are together, they will be able to unleash a one-time use only power from Renova, one of the shades who rules the power of death. So I guess if we manage to get the 6th hero and that power doesn't manage to work, well, we can revert to the captain's plan. More importantly, Moeka is worried that the Abyss will start getting more aggressive with their attacks now that the 5th hero has been acknowledged. I'm sure that's not foreshadowing or anything like that. For now, all we can really do is rest and hope for the best, and after briefly meeting with Muulani and Kachina, we return to our accommodation. While we slept, Shalonen and Sitlali make a trip to visit the Lord of the Night to ask about forging our ancient name. Sitlali reveals she took a look into Moeka's future and witnessed only death, which I guess makes sense since the power she plans to borrow is from, the ruler of death. Resolved to try and save Moeka and Natlan, Sitlali believes that our involvement and ability to change fate as a descender may be the key, and Shalonen similarly is willing to sacrifice her life force to forge our ancient name. The Lord of the Night, impressed by their resolve and hopeful for the future of Natlan, provides the duo with the Pilgrim's Chronicle, which will record both past and future deeds in Natlan and allow the ancient name to be forged. So I guess that means she's given her approval? The next morning, after Sitlali and Shalonen give us the TLDR of their adventures last night, Kachina rushes in to tell us that the Abyss is attacking, and it's far worse than what we've seen thus far. Unfortunately, at this point, we began a battle even more imposing than the fight with the Abyss, a battle against server maintenance. Can I finish the Abyss war before the servers go offline? Probably not. Will it make me restart the entire thing? Well, I sure hope not, but I guess we'll find out. Also, like I mentioned, I'm not going to show every single fight, because this video is definitely already very long, and we haven't even hit Act 5 yet, so I'll leave some for the condensed challenge video. Unfortunately, since this was only the second time I had done this section of Natlan, and because in the first run of my main account I was fighting through literal tears, I missed a lot of the bonus chances to save more people and the extra dialogue options. The good news is I know better now, but for this run we'll probably see a higher death count despite Arlecchino being basically the perfect solo character for this challenge. I'm pretty sure I discussed this topic in a previous video, but it was the single most pressing issue that I had while editing this video, so I'm just going to discuss it again. I don't know if it's because of the change of seasons, but I have had to aggressively babysit my apartment thermostat lately, and not to be dramatic, but it's low-key a nightmare. I prefer my apartment to be on the cooler side since it's easier to layer up if you get cold, but unfortunately my downstairs neighbors seem to prefer living in an actual sauna. I don't think I ever need to turn on my heat outside of winter, and even then it's rare. I just have to turn off the air conditioning if I want to increase the temperature. If I don't have the air on, it ends up rapidly reaching over 75 degrees in my apartment, which, for the record, is a lovely temperature when it's the temperature outside. But when it's the temperature inside, it may as well be 100 degrees. I like to keep my apartment around 67, a nice cool temperature. But lately it's become a battle of igloo versus sauna. Apartment living truly is not for the weak. And before anyone comments, "Oh, Ren, you wouldn't survive a day in tropical climate," you're right, I wouldn't. I went to Abu Dhabi several years ago in like August, which was my first mistake, and I vividly remember stepping outside of my hotel at night and almost instantly beginning to sweat. For all I know, I might have been physically melting. It was a humbling experience, truly. Well, that's not great.
That black pit of despair will eat you all alive! At long last! Laugh all you want, it's gonna eat you too!
I mean, she's not wrong. So I don't know if you guys have heard this, but for some people, Wii Music works surprisingly well to keep you focused when working. I have recently learned that I am one of those people. Unfortunately, it has resulted in my Spotify looking like this. Yeah, what does that say about me? Well, I don't know, but it's certainly going to mess up my Spotify Wrapped by the end of the year. Toto survived, and frankly, that is all that matters to me every time I run through this. I saw that apparently if you take too long, the doctor dies, and I have no idea how true that is, but I refuse to test it. Before I can finish helping the Children of Echoes, we get cut off by server maintenance. So I guess now we'll have to see how much has to be redone. Oh, that's not too bad. Alright, so it's time for another installment of What's Ren Watching. Ironically, while I was editing this, I kept getting distracted by a new show. Well, new to me, I guess. The show is called FBI. It's in the same cinematic universe as Law & Order, as well as the Chicago trilogy. All shows that I enjoy, so obviously the showrunner knows exactly how to keep me distracted. I like to have my TV on sometimes in the background when working, so there's some noise, but there's only so much Weather Channel, or depressing national news, that I can listen to, so sometimes I turn on random channels, and this channel in particular had FBI running. And while the script should have taken me a few hours, it took me an entire day. After we clear out the monsters and the Children of Echoes for now, we find out from Kachina, and indirectly Kanich, that the Flower Feather clan got hit especially hard, and we realize Chaska and Koichi might be in trouble. Unfortunately, when we arrive, we find Koichi fatally injured. We're able to use our purification to give her enough time for some final words, but we were still too late. Despite it initially looking like Chaska was about to go ballistic, she manages to rein it in, and is rewarded, I guess, by being acknowledged by the bearer of her ancient name from 500 years ago, meaning our sixth and final hero has been awakened. We return to the stadium with Chaska carrying Koichi's body, and after checking up on the baby Saurian we saved, we bear witness to the 500-year plan moving forward with the heroes of the past and the present. I don't care what anyone says, you can never make me hate Natlan. I love this quest, I love the cutscenes, and I especially love this cutscene.
In the name of the Pyro Archon Halloran, I declare the Night Wars underway! The Ode of Resurrection will guard all life till the war is over!
Ah, chills. Literal chills.
Thanks to Moika's
outright scary level of power,
we're able to finally destroy the abyssal tumors. Though, to be fair, we don't see much of her powers because we can take out the enemies and abyssal pylons pretty easily by ourselves. Maybe the ceremony to borrow Ronova's powers boosted Arlecchino's powers too, since, well, I don't think I have to explain. Okay, so nobody's going to acknowledge the literal hole in the sky? No? Okay, sure, I guess we'll bench it for now. With the battle over, Moika hosts a celebratory feast at the inn. Moika explains that after some preparation, she'll launch a final counterattack to, ideally, destroy the abyss within Natlan permanently. While everyone celebrates, we speak with Moika, and I realized while editing that we awkwardly see the guy who asked us to save his mom sitting in the background, alone, because I didn't know there was a task that we had to do in order to actually save her. In other runs, if you do successfully save her, the two of them will be chatting in the background during this conversation, but oops, my bad. Meanwhile, Moika invites us to join her in her final battle against the Abyss, but she tells us to sleep on it and let her know our final decision in the morning. Outside, we run into Silali, who warns us that despite everything, since Natlan borrowed Ronova's power all of this time, Moika is still destined to die. She also asks for us to do what we can to somehow make sure Moika survives, so I guess we don't really have much to think about when it comes to making a decision.
Flashback.
The rules of war are woven in the womb.
The victors shall burn bright, while the losers must turn to ash.
The victors shall burn bright, while the losers must turn to ash.
There it is! There it is!
The next day, Moika asks about our progress on obtaining the ancient name, and is pleased to know that the Lord of the Night was willing to help us. She explains she wouldn't want us to risk joining her in the final battle if we couldn't, in the worst case scenario, utilize the Ode of Resurrection. We might be the only person in all of Tevat right now, well, besides our twin, who can resist the abyssal energy we'll be dealing with. But that doesn't mean we're immune to death in battle. I guess she's unaware that we have the plot armor that only a protagonist can manage. We agree to accompany Moika once our ancient name is successfully forged, and after witnessing a brief bit of an interaction between the captain and the Lord of the Night in regards to Renova's power and Moika's fate, we complete Act 4. We have time to kill while waiting for our ancient name, so we decide to make a trip to the Flowerfeather clan to see if they need help with recovering after everything that happened. There we run into Ion-san, who's there for the same reason. She tells us the Collective of Plenty was relatively unscathed by comparison, so she brought some of her students here to see what can be done to help. We decide to all go meet with the chief to see what can be done, officially beginning the Interlude quest. Upon finding the chief, we see a bunch of mentally ill people, the game's words, not mine, and discover that after the battle, various tribespeople were found collapsed in the wilderness near abyssal tumor sites. They're going with the theory that the abyss exposure caused the symptoms, but they have no idea what can be done to treat it. Our attempt to remove the abyssal energy from the afflicted individuals does absolutely nothing, so I guess we gotta move on to plan B. Over to you, Ion-san. Ion-san suggests we try to go one by one, or well, more specifically, case by case, and see if there's anything we can do to help. Up first is the guy who thought he was drowning on dry land, and is currently, relatable. After trying to warm him with fire fails to help, we decide to seek out his friend for advice and maybe context, if he's, reliving past trauma, or if his friend knows anything about the name Duarte. Luckily, we got a 2-for-1 special with the friend's answer. Apparently, he nearly drowned as a child, but was saved by a Saurian companion who is named Duarte. Where is Duarte now? Dead. Okay, well, that really doesn't help us. Luckily, though, we can indwell Saurians, and somehow, fake Duarte is able to at least knock some sense into him, literally, and get him out of the abyss nightmare. With the newly discovered knowledge we can actually treat the victims, it's time to head to Case 2. Case 2 is somehow far less stable than the first guy, so there's not a huge amount of information for us to work with. Thankfully, the tribal chief is a pro at convenient timing and arrives to let us know about the woman's past trauma. According to him, her parents died fighting the abyss, which encouraged her to protect her little brother and follow in the footsteps of their parents. On the path of the warrior, not the death part. Apparently, the brother has also trained in the art of convenient timing and arrives with a weapon.
And let me see what you have!
No! In true big sister fashion, her brother's recklessness wakes her from her crisis, at least temporarily, and with her newfound resolve to protect him, we bring her to fight some weak abyssal monsters that are still hanging around the outskirts of the tribe. Wow, Genshin has been working so hard on flames. I hope there's no specific reason for that. We admittedly do all of the fighting, but it seems to work just as well in completely waking her up. A win's a win. Returning to the tribe, we find out Case 3 is going ballistic and attacking anyone in sight. Okay. Great. Apparently, he's hallucinating everyone as various abyss monsters, so he's even worse than the last two combined. We decide this time we need to just beat him up so we can restrain him, but with C2R1 Arlecchino, he doesn't even get a chance to finish his monologue. While he's knocked out, we're visited by the captain, who informs us the man is likely suffering from abyssal corrosion syndrome. In minor cases, like with the first two people we treated, it's possible to break them out of the hallucination, be it with words or a good punch. However, for more serious cases like this one, only medical intervention will save them. As it turns out, the captain has actually created that exact medical intervention. So, should we call him Dr. Captain now? Dr. Professor Captain? Would the be dropped at that point? Dr. Professor the Captain seems kind of like a mouthful. The warrior's father requests that the medicine be administered despite the side effects it may cause, and thanks to Dr. Professor the Captain, the warrior breaks out of his hallucination. Ion-san takes the man, along with some more medicine, back to the tribe, and we get the chance to chat with Never mind, that's too much to keep saying. We get the chance to chat with the captain. He shares that Guthrid, the guy who tried to take over Auroron, was the one who developed the medicine, being the actual doctor, but also was the captain's second in command. Unfortunately, he used himself as a test subject and died shortly after as a result. Despite the fact the game, gave us his name during the whole Auroron incident, the captain shares that he would like to keep further information about that and why his soul is just hanging out close to his chest. Get it? Because Sorry, never mind. In exchange for not telling us about that, he agrees to answer any question we ask, which, considering he's number one of the Harbingers, there is a plethora of things we could ask. The goals of the Tsaritsa, the plan with the Gnosis, what happened to Conria.
Paimon wants to know how you eat with the mask.
Or that, I guess. We instead opt to ask about Renova.
In the garden cultivated by the gods, flowers and weeds grow side by side. When the weeds compete for nutrients in the soil, the gardener intervenes to inhibit their growth.
Oh, sure, whatever you say. Seeing that we don't entirely understand his riddles, he takes his mask off, but we don't actually get to see it. Eventually, Aeon-san returns and tells us that Shallonen is ready to start forging our ancient name, but needs our Pilgrim's Chronicle. And here I thought she'd been forging it this whole time. We return to the stadium, reuniting with the rest of our friends, minus Chaska, but she arrived shortly after, and provide Shallonen with the device. We're sent away because apparently it would be too embarrassing to praise me to my face, and after some waiting, we're told to wait even longer, this time without Paimon, who is now tasked with sharing our escapades from outside of Natlan. Poor Shallonen, she just opened a massive can of worms. 3 to 5 business days later, Paimon returns, and Shallonen swears to forge us the ancient name to end all ancient names, or at least to end the abyss. With that, we complete the Interlude quest. That night, instead of falling asleep, we find ourselves in the Night Kingdom. That's probably bad, right? After walking for a while, we come across a giant wall of light, with a bunch of souls attempting to break through. While they can't get through the wall, we can, and on the other side, we realize these souls are in intense agony. We also spot the captain and Guthred, who can't see us, and the captain swears to his soldiers that he'll deliver them to the place he promised before in an instant we're yoinked back to reality, reminded by Paimon that we have to go meet with Moika. Officially starting Act 5, we head to the Speaker's Chamber, finding Silali and Shallonen already there. Moika shares that she'll be moving forward with her plan in 3 days, and Shallonen swears on her tribe's pride to get the ancient name forged for us in time. That's putting a lot of pressure on her tribe, but hey, I guess if she says so. Meanwhile, after Moika suggests we relax and rest up over the next few days, we're surprised by Mualani and Kachina, who reveal that there's going to be a big party for us at the People of the Springs ahead of our mission, basically like the feast we attended at the beginning of Act 1. Just as everyone's about to set off, we suggest inviting Moika. After all, the chance we have now is because of her sacrifice 500 years ago and everything she's done up until now for the sake of Natlan. While Mualani and Kachina are a little intimidated at the idea of inviting the Archon, which I mean is kind of silly after everything we've done together, but what do I know, we interrupt Moika's painting and formally invite her. She agrees to attend, but suggests there's no need to notify the chief ahead of time, and it'll probably be fine if she surprises everyone. Something tells me that will not be fine, but that's none of my business. At the People of the Springs, we see the chief visibly stressed when Kanich arrives with another delivery. Apparently, upon hearing about the feast, the Natlan citizens who can't attend for one reason or another are instead sending obscene amounts of contributions to show their appreciation. We arrive, and after getting over her initial shock at Moika's appearance, the chief explains the predicament. Moika suggests any supplies that go unused should be brought to the Speaker's Chamber to be distributed to those who need it. We also learn that Atea passed away shortly after the fight in Act 1, much to our shock, though it was not entirely a surprise considering her condition. However, Mualani quickly changes the subject to prevent the mood from souring further, and everyone splits up to prepare for the festivities. We're given the option to chat with our various friends and see what they're involved with, and while I was super big-brained and made sure to talk to everyone so I could explain each scene, we're halfway through page 25 of the script, and we have the longest Archon quest ahead of us, so we'll skip it. With the party in full swing, we find out from several people that they saw loved ones who had passed away in recent dreams. We decide to share what we saw in our dream last night, and after Auroron and Moika discuss the possibility that we saw the captain's future, we agree to let Auroron try to interpret our dream. After, Auroron confirms that it was Guthred who tried to possess him back in Act 4, and also shares that he recently looked into the tribal records, and while there wasn't a huge amount of information from 500 years ago, he learned that Guthred was far more cold and decisive compared to the captain, but the story of his sacrifice for Natlan still lives on in tribal legends to this day. Moika also reveals that during that time, the captain was known by the people of Natlan as the hero Thrain, but it's unlikely anyone from the present day would connect the two identities together. Auroron also expresses confusion over the fact we were able to see Guthred in a dream despite having never met him before, but after Moika speculates that we actually saw his soul, Auroron shares he sensed multiple souls on the captain. So you didn't think to lead with that information? Like many other seemingly important topics, we decide to bench it for a future date, since it probably won't interfere with our mission in the Night Kingdom. Plus, we have a party in our honor that we're neglecting. I feel like the meme potential of this moment has been wildly neglected. After a few more hours, the party eventually dies down, and considering we want to check on the status of our ancient name, we accompany Kachina back to the Children of Echoes. Along our walk, we reminisce about the events that occurred, an hour ago for all of you. give or take, and learn that Toto did in fact survive and is recovering, so all's well that ends well. Finally, at the outskirts of the tribe, we run into Io's mom. Io is Kachina's Saurian companion, if I failed to mention that earlier. Io's mom is visibly distressed, and leads us to Io, who's been withdrawn since losing his grandparents in the battle. It heavily resembles abyssal corrosion syndrome, so with Kachina's permission, we try administering some medicine. Io immediately perks up, inhaling some steak, and generally seems normal again, making us feel much better about leaving the trio of Saurians for now while we check on our ancient name. In the village, we find Seatlali waiting outside Shalonen's workshop, who shares that despite several headaches, it seems like the forging was successful. Shortly after, Shalonen exits the workshop, showing off the completed ancient name. She shares that our ancient name is Tumaini, meaning hope. With the name successfully forged, now comes the testing to ensure it'll actually work if worse comes to worse. Shalonen did her job, so now it's Seatlali's turn. We head to a secluded area, and Seatlali explains that the test will make sure the ancient name will allow us to connect to Natlan's ley lines. It has the same principle as the Spirit Speaker Stone, so she's worried that the whole abyssal energy geyser might happen again. I guess that explains why we're in the middle of nowhere. Once the test begins, Seatlali shares that we have an incredibly strong connection to the ley lines, so the ancient name is ready to go. However, some wayward souls begin to appear, having been made visible by the ritual, but even Seatlali is shocked by the sheer number of them. With the test over, Seatlali explains her theory that the sheer strength of our soul drew those nearby who were either accidentally ejected from the Night Kingdom or unable to enter altogether as a result of the abyssal corruption. The souls that were ejected are unable to return to the Night Kingdom, doomed to a hopeless fate of wandering until they disappear. But for the souls that never entered at all, there's still a chance to send them as long as their souls are still intact. Seatlali begins to do her best with the ones she can help, but we're surprised to see the first soul we help is none other than Vichama. He laments on the irony of him dying in battle and having a chance to see Malco again, only to be rejected by the Night Kingdom. But thankfully, Seatlali manages to open up a path for him. He apologizes over the Spirit Speaker Stone before leaving, and we continue to try to help other souls. Many are unable to be saved, either due to too much time passing and their souls fading, or due to being part of the group that was forced out of the Night Kingdom. And if you're wondering, yes, I did cry during this section the first time I played it. What can I say? Eventually, we run into a pair of Saurians, but before Seatlali can send them into the Night Kingdom, Io rushes towards them, with Shalonen realizing it must be Io's grandparents. Being held by his grandparents, Io almost immediately falls asleep for the first time in days, and despite Seatlali's warnings, they refuse to leave him, willing to sacrifice being unable to enter the Night Kingdom in order to comfort Io. Bawled my eyes out here too, for the record. With further resolve to save the ley lines and prevent this from ever happening again, the next 2 days pass in the blink of an eye. Literally. Now it's time to team up with Moika and save the Night Kingdom. You know, thinking about it now, I find it even funnier how when Natlan was releasing and early access was available, we would be able to go to Natlan before Inazuma. So anyone who did that path would see the story as us essentially risking our lives and agreeing to go to war more than once for Natlan, and then immediately getting to Inazuma and being like, no, we don't want to help you guys, we just want to meet the Raiden Shogun. Truly, I could make a whole video essay on the continuity issues that Genshin sets itself up with, thanks to early access and making vital lore being only available in temporary events, but I digress. After Moika shares our ancient name with the people of Natlan, we enter the Sacred Flame and begin our mission inside the Night Kingdom. The first section is with a trial Moika, but, well, this isn't Moika only, and no, I probably won't be doing that anytime soon. I don't even have her on my main account, nor do I plan to get her with this rerun because I have to prioritize C6 R5 Lowen, and yes, my account is probably as bricked as you can assume it is. Returning to Arlecchino, it's time for us to make our way through the Night Kingdom. Wait a minute, weren't we in Natlan to recruit for Project Stuzha? Why are we even doing all of this? Though, I guess if Natlan is no longer at constant war, they'll have more time and no place to use their skills. Yeah, actually this is all still going according to plan. Yep, 100%. Moving on. I know in other solo runs I've mentioned I won't be going to Nodcry, at least not for the foreseeable future, but Arlecchino only will probably be an exception, don't worry. Though once I post the condensed challenge video, I don't entirely know how I promote Arlecchino only in Nodcry, but I guess none of you mind, and frankly I know this challenge is very heavy on being preferred for longtime subscribers versus getting me new viewers. All in all, I've had a lot of fun with this challenge, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how much has changed since I first recorded Mondstadt. I definitely learned quite a bit in regards to Arlecchino's playstyle, as well as how to do these solo runs overall. Arlecchino has kind of always been the sacrificial lamb, so to speak, since she's the first one to tackle each nation after my main account, and up until Natlan, it had been quite a long time for the other nations since I had done those quests. That said, I'm still really proud of this series overall. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, it's been a physical proof of how much my channel has grown and how much I've grown personally over the last 2 years. It's kind of crazy that it's already been over 2 years. I sometimes feel like it's only been a year at most, but then I'm humbled when I see how long it's been since I posted some of my part 1s. Don't worry, I've recorded a lot of them to completion, and I will be recording even more of those part 2s over the next month or so, along with re-recording Kanich and Nouvellette. Those are definitely my highest priority. Thanks to help from Ateya, Vichama, Malco, Guthred, and Koichi, we're able to make it through the meetup with Moika. With Moika, the Lord of the Night grants us the power of Pyro, which we already have, so it's kind of repetitive. The fight is also exclusively with Moika and the Traveler, so Arlecchino doesn't get much screen time. However, at the beginning of this video, I mentioned a cutscene in Act 5 that I will lock in for without fail every time, and it's this scene.
We are the inheritors of memory and legend! Those who grew alongside sun and wind!
Those who forged our own destiny and future! That is Natlan's fire, the lifeblood of our nation!
Kachina deserves the world. Just for that, we won't recruit you to Project Stuzha. Also, between me recording this on Arlecchino and now, the cutscenes have finally been voiced fully. A win, truly. Power of friendship, meet your match. The power of national pride. It's kind of like when you're upset at the politics of your country, but then you're watching the Olympics and you lock in for your nation's team. Or maybe that's just an American thing. Regardless, with the support from the people of Natlan and the messages of support our friends gave us within our ancient name, we're able to defeat the dragon thing, saving Natlan. Upon our return to actual Tevat, a celebration is held that's typically reserved for the most accomplished warriors after their last Night Warden Wars. And I guess in this case, it's for the now completed last Night Warden Wars ever. The ceremony consists of mostly crowd celebrations, including autographs, which are a nightmare on controller for the record, a photo shoot, and dancing, though I will spare you from that. However, during the festivities, we're pulled away by Sitlali, who explains that despite being successful in the final battle, Moika's future still only shows death. We share that Moika left to restore the Night Kingdom, but it's unlikely the Lord of the Night has the power to do that, meaning Moika might be intent on utilizing her death to power the Lord of the Night. Sitlali surmises that Moika probably went to Ochka Natlan, and once we get there... Wait a minute. I've seen something like that before. A few times, actually. Why does everyone have a connection with the Ruler of Death? Creepiness of the giant eyes in the sky aside, we find Moika and the Lord of the Night conversing with Renova, via the eyes if it wasn't clear. Moika confirms our suspicion, sharing that she intends to repeat 500 years ago, this time by putting her remaining life force within the sacred flame to power the Lord of the Night for the next few centuries, leaving it up to future Pyro Archons to continue the flame's power beyond that. She also explains that she wishes for Natlan to no longer live as a nation of war, hoping that the pilgrimage will just be a fun test of strength instead of having to risk death against the Abyss. Roanova, for what it's worth, could not care less either way. However, the Lord of the Night does not kill Moika, and shares that another person wishes to participate. Roanova grows increasingly agitated, but it doesn't take long before said person arrives. As it turns out, when we saw the captain talking to the Lord of the Night in Act 4, it was for this moment. He explains that he, unlike Moika, actually seeks death, since, you know, the whole immortal thing. Not to mention, he has an insane amount of beef with Roanova personally, as she's the one responsible for the Curse of Immortality. A nice bonus would be that if he offers himself up to the Lord of the Night, it would let him rewrite the rules of the ley lines and open it up to the souls he carries within him. He finally explains that Conrian technology allowed him to modify his heart so that, you know what, actually, let him explain it. There's not really a way to explain it much better than beyond how he just actually says it.
With the help of technology from Conria, my heart was modified to convert memories and souls from the ley lines into knowledge.
Yeah, what he said. Anyways, the Lord of the Night agreed to this, so Moika's big speech a few minutes ago was for absolutely nothing. That's probably embarrassing. The captain turns his attention to Roanova, challenging her directly.
If I sacrifice my life for the Lord of the Night, you get the death you desire. But, at the same time, the Curse of Immortality would negate the very death you seek. Left unresolved, that paradox could uproot the natural order of this world. Even you, great ruler of death, lack the capacity to bear the consequences of that outcome. Your curse is now the tool with which I will overturn the oppression of the gods. This is my challenge to you.
That goes hard. What an icon. Converting to a cinematic, Roanova allows the captain to fuse his life force with the Lord of the Night, sparing Moeka a second early death and providing the Lord of the Night with immortality. After sharing a bit of the captain's story with us, she returns to the Night Kingdom, and we return to the stadium. I guess I should probably get a move on with reporting the captain's extended leave of absence to the Tsaritsa. We see a bit of Natlan post-war, from the point of view of Moeka writing a letter to her sister. With Natlan in an era of peace, we pay our respects to the new monument for all of those who gave their lives, before witnessing a man share the story of our deeds with a group of children. With that, we wrap up Act 5, completing the Natlan Archon quest. We may be 30 pages in, but worry not, we still have the Dainslift quest. Though, much like the Act 5 cutscenes, this was still missing voices when I played through it. While wandering around Natlan, we run into Eonsan outside of the Collective of Plenty. She's pretty thrilled to see us because she needs help patrolling. Apparently, the tribe is hosting a bodybuilding competition soon, and everyone's prioritizing that. Well, we're definitely not entering that competition, so we'll just take a lap around the volcano, I guess. While patrolling, we come across a hilly trail sitting alone in a cave. The hilly trail runs off after we approach, dropping a shiny object that, shocking nobody, catches Paimon's attention. Upon further investigation, we realize it's one of the keys from the spaceship the twins used to get to Teyvat. We apparently still have ours, so by process of elimination, we assume it belongs to our twin, and they must have been nearby recently. Side note, I remember when this happened, people were so mad about the fact a spaceship was suddenly mentioned. I get that it wasn't mentioned before, but what else would have brought them to another planet? I feel like a spaceship goes without saying, but maybe that's just me. Eonsan shows up and thanks us for helping, but shares that the bodybuilding competition was cancelled because the Abyss Order suddenly began to attack, and we need to go see Moeka to let her know. Initially, Moeka tells us we don't need to get involved because we've already done enough for Natlan, and they can handle the Abyss Order. Sure, we don't doubt that, but we actually have ongoing beef with the Abyss Order. Oh, and our sibling actually runs it. Did we not mention that yet? Regardless, alongside Eonsan, we head to the Masters of the Nightwind, where a majority of the Abyss Order forces seem to be. There, we run into Lali, and after she embarrasses herself by indirectly insulting our sibling, not that it really fazed us, she decides to take out her emotions on the newly arrived Abyss Mages. Well, we can't leave her to fight by herself, can we? Shortly after, more Masters of the Nightwind forces arrive to help, and we decide to storm a nearby enemy stronghold. Since we're already over an hour into this video, and I have another video I want to post by the end of the week, I'm going to keep this section short. The enemies are primarily Hydro, Cryo, and Electro, so this fight was a breeze. We really didn't even need the reinforcements to help, but I can't say the same about the other challenges. Moving on, with the enemies dealt with in this area, we decide to return to the cave to continue investigating it. As we do, a woman arrives suddenly, and I love how we just don't mention her eyes or anything about it. It's obvious enough that we know, but we decide to ignore it. Besides, she's in a panic that monsters are chasing her, but we don't see, well, anything. She tries to run off but falls, claiming to have been hit by one of the monsters, and by touching her hand to help her up, suddenly those same monsters appear in our vision. That's freaky. With actual targets now, we're able to take care of them and save the girl. Paimon's still confused, but that's not really the primary focus right now. The girl introduces herself as Deirdre, and now that she's safe, she, well, explains her entire life story to us, more or less. More importantly, she shares that her goal was to find the Savior, who conveniently looks just like us, just of the opposite sex. Wow, I wonder who that could be. Basically, the Savior was touted as the one who will protect everyone from doomsday, and since the day of the disaster was closing in, she was sent by her family to try and track down the Savior. Day of the disaster? So, kinda like 2012? Wow, I just realized there's probably people who watch my videos who either weren't alive or were too young to remember the whole 2012 end of the world stuff. That stung, I'm not gonna lie. We decide to return to the Masters of the Nightwind to try and get more clues about what the Abyss Order is up to and how, if at all, it relates to Deirdre. There, we see Eonsan again, who tells us they're essentially in a stalemate with the Abyss Order. The enemies aren't doing, well, anything, and the Natlan soldiers don't want to risk running blindly into a potential trap. We talk to some of the soldiers, and beyond one wanting our autograph and the other wanting to lose in a fight to us, all we really learn is it seems like the Abyss enemies have just been, well, meditating. You know what? Sure, okay, let's let them do that. Maybe they'll become truly enlightened and stop bothering us. One could only hope. Lali arrives and shares that when she was asleep, she sensed noise in the ley lines.
It's like a signal that exists on a different dimension of reality.
And I'm sure that means nothing. Lali, believing it's better to be safe than sorry, suggests talking to the tribal chiefs to try and get forces together to deal with the Abyss Order before they actually start causing problems. Before they go, we ask about what happened with Deirdre, and Lali, totally not reacting with jealousy, declares the girl is probably bad news. We decide to return to the cave to check in on her, where she ambushes us, or, well, tries anyways. She was afraid the sound was monsters returning, so I guess we can't entirely blame her. After making her some food so she doesn't, starve, she shares a memory from her childhood.
And often, my mind would drift to this question. Is this starry sky actually real?
That's suspicious. That's weird.
Before long, more monsters arrive, but luckily for Deirdre, we have Arlecchino, so it's not really much of a struggle. Like I said before, trust me, I'll show these fights properly in the condensed video. We decide to stick around for the night in case more monsters arrive, and while sleeping, we find ourselves in the Night Kingdom, spotting our sibling talking to the Lord of the Night. It's only a brief scene though, and after a freaky prophecy-style nightmare about doomsday, we're awoken and notice that Deirdre was holding our hand. She's flustered and tries to explain it seemed like we were having a nightmare, but we're more concerned with what we saw during said nightmare. Regardless, the next morning we decide to return to the Masters of the Nightwind and tell Deirdre that if she needs to reach us, she can write a letter to Mawika.
Mawika? Who's Mawika?
I'm sure that means nothing. Arriving at the tribe, Yansan shares that the Abyss Order's front line has completely collapsed, taken down by a single person. A single person with absolute hatred for Abyss enemies, strange powers, and unparalleled sword skills necessary to take out that many of them in one go. I wonder who it could be.
Dainsliff.
Now, for those of you who like this account, played the quest without the full English dialogue, it is now voiced, and I made a video with all of the Dainsliff scenes from filming Mualani only. I'll continue my usual recap with this, but you've probably already noticed I haven't included a whole lot of audio scenes, and that's just because it wasn't fully voiced at the time of recording. Dainsliff eventually arrives at the tribe, and we introduce Yansan to him, explaining he's definitely not an enemy to the tribes, despite having a rough exterior. Eventually, Yansan leaves to let us catch up, and Dainsliff shares that he's been unable to get to the bottom of what the Abyss Order is planning, but the sheer amount of enemies in the area gives a perfect opportunity to wipe out a significant portion of their forces, an opportunity that Dainsliff doesn't intend to pass up. The next morning, we find Dainsliff and Yansan discussing plans, but Dainsliff unwilling to waste time waiting for the approval from Mawika to dispatch forces to the newly discovered headquarters in Natlan. He shares he'll just go alone first, but then quickly looks to us with as much expectation as you can get from a stoic face like his. We agree to accompany him, and Yansan shares that with our combined power, she's not remotely worried. But in the worst case scenario, backup from the tribes will be close behind anyways. Arriving in Natlan, we're surprised with Dainsliff on our team. He's not playable, so he's kind of just like in Honkai Star Rail during the simulated universe, where you can have the Path Resonance release a one-time bonus attack every so often. That said, we don't really need a whole lot of help. Sure, we have a Pyro Mage followed by a Pyro Abyss Herald, but comparatively, fighting them basically individually is far better than fighting them alongside a mob of other enemies, like we faced shortly after. I think it's so hilarious because this section was an absolute nightmare with every other challenge run, but with Arlecchino, it was a walk in the park. I fear I truly set myself up. I have been humbled without fail by every other challenge run thus far. Kinda dreading trying to do this with Mizuki, or level 40 Kokomi for that matter, or Lowen. Eventually, we make it to the centermost area and find this guy, though. Great. Instead of immediately jumping into a fight, we have a back and forth with Hayden. I don't care if it hasn't been revealed yet, I'm just using his government name. Hayden shares that the greatest wish of the Abyss Order has been fulfilled, and the ley lines of Conria have been reweaved. So, where is the new Conria? Well, basically on top of Natlan, kinda. We realized the comment Lolly made about a different realm of our own referenced this new Conria, and more importantly, it's highly likely Deirdre is from a different time and space from us. Get it? Because space and time for, yeah, you get it. Dainsliff, for the record, thinks this whole thing is a load of garbage, and we're sent into a fight with Hayden. Eventually, and I do mean eventually because he has a pyro state that I can't do anything to, we defeat him. Dainsliff says he'll stay to do some cleanup and further investigation, while we decide to go find Deirdre to see if our theory is true. When we leave, Dainsliff is attacked suddenly by Hayden, who, as it turns out, was Dainsliff's former master. I highly recommend watching the dialogue scene if you haven't, and this isn't just to plug my own video, but it adds so much hearing Dainsliff's growing anger. Dainsliff, after giving Hayden 100 deaths, yes, literally, expresses disappointment that the man who taught him swordsmanship joined the Abyss Order. He also brings up his former classmate. Okay, yeah, I see why Dainsliff has beef with the 5 of them. Hayden shares that he doesn't remember anything from back then, his memories having eroded over time. After some further reminiscing that we don't get to hear, Hayden admits that this was all a ploy, and that the ley lines needed memories to help truly restore Conria, which is why the Abyss Order has been so heavily focused on meditating. Dainsliff scoffs that the plan could still fail, and that being able to wipe out a huge percentage of the Abyss Order was well worth some memories, before proceeding to kill Hayden 100 more times for his deception. Meanwhile, we find Deirdre, and a cutscene begins, one that, at the time of filming, was also not voiced, voiced, but it is voiced now. Upon holding her hand, we see what she's seeing, the doomsday she had mentioned, which we now realize was the cataclysm from 500 years ago. Deirdre realizes we aren't from the same time, and after explaining we're from her future, she's at least relieved to know the world didn't end, but decides that she doesn't want to know about what fate awaited Conria. Instead, she asks if there's something we can give her to show our twin as proof we met. I know whatever decision we make doesn't really matter here, but I still gave it to her. After, time stops for Deirdre, and our twin appears, suspecting Istaroth was involved in this situation. We're told that when the cataclysm happened, our twin was approached by Deirdre, who claimed to know us. They had been completely unable to even find a trace of us up until that point, and weren't entirely convinced. But upon seeing the key, they knew they had to decide between searching for us or staying to defend Conria. They chose to search for us, and eventually found us, still in the spaceship with our key, which is when the events of the opening cutscene occurred. Our twin directs their frustration towards Istaroth, now knowing that the actions 500 years in the future set in motion the decision to leave Conria during the cataclysm. While we consider how depressing Deirdre's fate in all of this was, set out to find the savior and instead sending the savior away, we decide to turn our attention to the revival of Conria. Our twin explains that while it isn't fully complete, the ley lines have been finished, with new Conria being superimposed over Natlan, which kind of feels like a bad omen if I'm being honest. The Lord of the Night didn't seem to think so, and figured as long as it doesn't interfere with Natlan's ley lines, then it's fine, and also provided some space for said ley lines. With the ley lines recreated, the Atlas of the New World was made, allowing for Conria to return when a good location is found, something necessary to speak to the heavenly principles on equal terms. We also find out Asmodee was spying on us the whole time, but that's neither here nor there, I guess, because our twin declares that we will reunite in the New World before leaving. Well, that's a whole lot of lore dropping in a very short time. We end up returning to the Masters of the Nightwind, and Yansan explains that the Abyss Order has completely withdrawn. Meanwhile, Citlali arrives and explains she spoke to the Lord of the Night and learned the gist of what happened.
Namely, to preserve an entire nation in the form of an atlas.
Isn't that kind of what Asmodee is doing in the Temple of Space? Maybe that's why she was snooping on us? Regardless, we leave, returning to the cave where we first met Deirdre, watching the stars, and completing A Space and Time for You. Wow, what a novel. Is this going to be longer than Fontaine? Well, I'll find out after editing. As always, thank you so much to my channel members for their continued support, as well as my Twitch subscribers. If you're new here, be sure to like and subscribe and hit the little bell so you never miss an upload. Until next time.